Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button, so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks. My name is Linda, and I am from a small town in Ohio, where people think they know everything about everyone else. For 40 years, I've poured my heart into this house, into my children, into making a home my husband could be proud of, but he never was. And tonight, it hit me harder than ever, right in the middle of my own kitchen, where I should have felt safe. He looked at the plate I had spent hours preparing, the aroma still warm, the vegetables perfectly roasted, and he laughed. Not a small chuckle, a cruel, mocking laugh that cut deeper than any knife could. "This again? You call this cooking?" he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt, and I felt something inside me snap. For years, I smiled, I apologized, I pretended it didn't hurt when he rolled his eyes at my meals or made sarcastic comments in front of our friends. But 40 years of that kind of humiliation builds up, layer by layer, until you can't take it anymore. I slammed the spatula down, the clang echoing through the room, and I shouted at him. 40 years, John. 40 years of trying to make you happy, and this is the thanks I get? My voice was shaking, and I saw the shock in his eyes because he wasn't used to me standing up, not like this, not with fire in my chest. He leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, trying to smirk his way out of the storm he started, but I wasn't backing down. "You know what, John? You've mocked every dish I've ever cooked, every attempt I've made to give this family a meal, and you've made me feel small every single day. And for what? So you could sit there with your superiority, pretending you're better than me?" I could see his jaw tighten, the amusement fading because for the first time, I wasn't just a patient, quiet wife. I was a woman who had had enough. "You don't get it," he barked, his voice rising, echoing off the walls. "I'm just saying the truth. I can't eat this garbage." And that's when I realized something important. He didn't see it as criticism. He saw it as control. That's what I've been fighting against my entire life, a man who uses mockery to dominate, to belittle, to keep me small. But no more. Control? Mockery? You think laughing at me makes you strong? I yelled back, pacing the kitchen like a caged lion breaking free. I've lived under your insults, your snide remarks, your awful jokes about my cooking for 40 years, and you know what? I'm done living like that. I could feel the heat of the confrontation rising, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "Linda, calm down. You're overreacting," he tried, but his voice was weak this time because he finally felt the weight of all those years he thought I'd just endure silently. But I wasn't calming down. I wasn't stepping back. "No, John. I'm not overreacting. You think your words are harmless? You think your laughter doesn't sting? I've spent 40 years of my life making this house a home, trying to make you proud, and you've spent 40 years tearing me down." And in that moment, I realized something else. This wasn't just about cooking. This was about respect. This was about dignity. This was about the truth I had buried inside me for decades, the truth that needed to come out, the truth I was finally ready to serve him, on a silver platter he would never forget. And I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You've mocked me for 40 years, John. But tonight, the joke is over. Tonight, I serve the truth, and you're finally going to taste it." He stared at me, wide-eyed, as if the woman standing in front of him was a stranger. For years, he had treated me like a shadow, a permanent fixture whose only job was to cook, clean, and smile while he judged me. And now, I was finally shaking that shadow off. "You've taken me for granted for decades, John. Every laugh, every sneer, every comment you thought was harmless, it's all added up, and I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt." My hands were trembling, but my voice was strong, cutting through the silence like a knife. "You think you're funny. You think mocking me makes you clever. Well, I've spent 40 years listening, John, and now it's time for you to listen." He opened his mouth, probably to launch another cruel joke, but I didn't let him. I slammed my hands on the counter, rattling the dishes. "No. Not one more word. Do you know what it feels like to be laughed at, year after year? To put your heart into something and watch someone treat it like dirt. That's my life with you, John. 40 years of trying to make a home, trying to make you happy, and you've spent every single meal tearing me down. My chest felt tight, and tears burned my eyes, but I refused to look away. I refused to show weakness, because the power in this fight was mine to take. You're being dramatic, he snapped, stepping toward me, trying to regain control. But his words fell flat against the storm I had become. Dramatic? Dramatic? I shouted back, taking a step closer. You have mocked my cooking in front of friends, family, neighbors, hell, even strangers. You've made me feel invisible, small, and worthless, and now you dare to call me dramatic? No, John. You've been the bully in this house, and tonight, I finally see you for what you are. I could see him falter, the color draining from his face as if my words were sharper than any plate I'd ever prepared. I grabbed the tray I had been preparing earlier and set it on the table in front of him. The aroma filled the kitchen, rich and comforting, and I looked him straight in the eyes. For 40 years, I've served you dishes that you mocked. Tonight, I'm serving something different. Tonight, you will taste the truth. You've been cruel, selfish, and ungrateful, and you've treated me like a second-class citizen in my own home. You've laughed at me, belittled me, and humiliated me, and now, I'm serving your karma. His lips twitched, maybe trying to form another insult, but I wasn't finished. You think this is just about food? I asked, my voice quiet but deadly. No, John. This is about respect. About love that you never returned. About a marriage where one person gave everything, and the other gave nothing but criticism and cruelty. I spent decades making sure everyone else in this house was happy, while you made sure I knew I would never be enough. But tonight, I've had enough of being invisible. Tonight, I'm making myself seen, loud and proud, and you're the first one to hear the truth. I set the silverware down, sharp and deliberate, like a warning. The tension in the room was electric. My children had peeked around the corner, their eyes wide, not knowing who to side with. Friends who had come over earlier had left in awkward silence, sensing the storm, the kind that only erupts after years of pent-up resentment. Linda, calm down. John hissed, but I shook my head. Calm was not on the menu tonight. Justice was. Respect was. And 40 years of silence had created a hunger in me that nothing could stop. I leaned forward, voice trembling with controlled fury, and said, You've mocked me, humiliated me, and made me feel less than for 40 years. But now, John, the joke is over. The silver platter is here, and the truth has a taste you will never forget. I could see it then, the first crack in his arrogance. The realization that for the first time, he had lost the power to control me. I wasn't crying quietly in the kitchen anymore. I wasn't apologizing for his bad moods, or for the food he didn't appreciate. I was standing, finally, fully, completely, with fire in my chest and truth on my tongue. 40 years of pain had led to this one moment, this one meal, this one confrontation that would change everything. And I knew that no matter how he reacted, I would never let anyone treat me like that again. Not him. Not anyone. The room went silent for a beat, but it wasn't peace, it was the kind of silence that trembles with tension. John's face was pale, his jaw tight, as he stared at the tray I had placed between us. It wasn't just food anymore, it was a statement. I could see the confusion, the shock, and maybe even the first flickers of fear. What is this?" he muttered, barely able to form the words. I smiled faintly, a sharp, controlled smile that didn't reach my eyes. This is 40 years of being ignored, John. This is 40 years of your mocking, your belittling, your cruelty, served back to you on a silver platter. He stepped closer, anger rising like a storm he couldn't control. Linda, this is ridiculous. You're making a scene over nothing. But it wasn't nothing, it was everything. Every sneer, every insult, every sarcastic comment he'd thrown at me for decades was in that tray, in the careful way I had prepared it, in the symbolism of the moment. Nothing? I echoed, voice rising, shaking with years of pent-up emotion. You call 40 years of insults nothing? You call destroying someone's self-esteem nothing? Every bite you're about to take is proof of what you've done to me. Every flavor carries the weight of your arrogance. The tension made my chest tight. My children were now fully watching, standing at the doorway, unsure if they should intervene or just absorb the storm. "Mom, stop yelling," one of them whispered, but I shook my head. I had spent my life whispering. I had spent my life apologizing for him, for the food he didn't like, for the mistakes that weren't mine. Not tonight. Tonight, my voice was loud enough for the whole world to hear. "No, you don't get to tell me to stop," I said firmly. "This isn't about comfort. This is about truth. And truth hurts, John. It hurts when you finally see how much damage you've done without ever realizing it." He grabbed the tray, half in anger, half in disbelief, and I grabbed it back. Our hands brushed, and the tension snapped like a live wire. "You don't get to turn 40 years of my life into some kind of performance," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. I held my ground, gripping the silver platter like it was a sword. "I am not performing, John. I am surviving. I am reclaiming. And every dish here is a reminder that your disrespect has consequences. You have had 40 years to appreciate me, to respect me, to love me properly, and you failed. Now it's my turn to show you what it feels like to be seen, to be acknowledged, and to have your actions reflected back at you." He stumbled back, visibly shaken, realizing that this was no ordinary fight. I could see the disbelief in his eyes, the way he hadn't expected me to rise like this, to challenge him openly and unapologetically. This is insane," he muttered, and I shook my head, letting the words hang in the thick, heavy air between us. Insane? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. Because you've spent your whole life undermining me, laughing at me, pretending my hard work was easy, pretending my love for this family didn't matter. But tonight, John, tonight, the truth is undeniable. And it starts with you tasting it. I placed the tray firmly on the table again, my hand steady despite the adrenaline pounding in my veins. "You've mocked me, humiliated me, and made me feel worthless for 40 years. Every laugh, every smirk, every comment you thought was clever, it ends here. You're going to see, taste, and feel what it means to finally be understood, and not in the way you want, but in the way I need." He stared at me, unable to respond, as the room seemed to shrink with the weight of my words. And in that silence, I realized something I had known all along: this was my moment. My voice. My fight. My truth. I watched John's face as he leaned closer to the tray, confusion battling with the rage still flickering in his eyes. He didn't know what to expect, just another mom-made meal he could mock, dismiss, or shove aside, but this was different. This was 40 years of my life condensed into every dish. Every bite carried the laughter he had directed at me, the sarcastic comments, the "you call this cooking" remarks, the silent judgment that had eaten away at my confidence for decades. "Go ahead," I said, my voice quiet but deadly firm. "Take a bite. Taste 40 years of your arrogance." He froze, hand hovering over the fork, and I could see the doubt creeping in. He had spent a lifetime thinking he had the power, that he could demean me and walk away unscathed, and now he was realizing that power was an illusion. "Linda, this is ridiculous. You can't expect me to," I cut him off sharply, letting every word land like a hammer. "No, John. I do expect you to. You've mocked my cooking, my effort, my heart for 40 years. And now it's time you experience it the way I've felt it. Every flavor, every seasoning, every texture tells a story. And that story is you." The first bite was tentative. His eyes widened immediately, the shock tangible. I leaned in, letting him squirm under my gaze, because for 40 years, I had squirmed under his. "Do you taste it?" I asked, my voice low, almost a whisper that carried the weight of decades. "This isn't just dinner, John. This is 40 years of your cruelty, served back to you so you can finally understand what it means to hurt someone with your words. He swallowed hard, the taste overwhelming him, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something new, regret. He didn't know how to process it. It wasn't just food, it was accountability plated perfectly. He looked at me, trembling, searching for some excuse, some way to regain control, but there was none. Linda. I don't understand. His voice cracked, his arrogance slipping, exposing the man who had spent a lifetime hiding behind mockery. I shook my head slowly, letting the silence do its work. You will understand, John. Not in your way, but in the way I've lived it every day. You will see, finally, that disrespect has consequences, that ignoring someone's love, effort, and dedication will always come back in ways you never expect. The room had changed. My children were watching, eyes wide, not just at the fight but at the transformation they were witnessing. Their mother, who had endured decades of humiliation quietly, was standing tall, commanding respect and attention. Mom, I've never seen you like this, my daughter whispered, but I didn't look away. I couldn't. This was my moment, the culmination of years of being dismissed and undervalued. And John was learning, painfully, that the truth can't be ignored forever. I leaned back, finally releasing the tension, letting him absorb it. You mocked me, belittled me, and made me feel worthless, for 40 years. Tonight, it stops. You've tasted my pain, my truth, and my power. And if there's one lesson to take away from this, it's simple: never underestimate the quiet one, because the quietest storms are often the deadliest. Respect isn't given lightly. It's earned. And John, you've finally earned a taste of it. The room felt heavier after that first bite. John sat there, frozen, like the world had shifted beneath him, and I finally let myself exhale. My children were staring at him with a mixture of awe and disbelief, and I could feel the pride radiating back at me. For 40 years, I had hidden behind polite smiles and silent endurance, letting his jabs and laughter cut into me. But tonight, that ended. Tonight, I had spoken with more power than any words could have conveyed. The plates, the meal, the presentation, it was all a mirror reflecting 40 years of disrespect, and for the first time, he was forced to confront it. My son broke the silence first, leaning forward in his chair with a sharp intensity in his eyes. Dad, why did you always do that? Why did you make her feel less than she is? His voice wasn't angry, it was raw, confused, hurt. John shifted uncomfortably, trying to muster some excuse, some defense, but I could see the cracks forming in his armor. There was nothing left to hide behind. He had spent decades believing that ridicule could shield him, that belittling me made him untouchable. But my children were witnesses now. And I wasn't silent anymore. I didn't mean, John started, but his words faltered, tripping over decades of unresolved guilt. I leaned in, keeping my gaze sharp, not with malice but with the firm weight of truth. You didn't mean what, John? You didn't mean to hurt me? Because that's exactly what you did. Every sarcastic comment, every dismissive glance, every smirk at my cooking, those weren't just harmless jokes. They were wounds. And I carried them for 40 years, quietly, while you thought it was funny. Do you understand now? My voice shook slightly, but the strength behind it left no room for denial. John opened his mouth, closed it, and then opened it again. I could see the realization dawning: he had underestimated me, underestimated the power of patience, the force of quiet endurance. And in that moment, I felt a strange liberation. Years of being undervalued and mocked had forged something fierce in me, something he could never break. I turned toward my children, and for the first time in decades, I felt fully seen. They weren't just watching, they were learning that strength comes from perseverance, that dignity isn't given, it's claimed. Finally, John managed a whisper. I didn't realize. I cut him off, shaking my head slowly, letting the silence speak louder than any words could. You thought you could humiliate me, diminish me, and it would never come back to you? Well, it has. Not in a public scandal, not in revenge, but in the simplest, most truthful way imaginable. I served you the truth on a silver platter. And now, maybe for the first time, you understand that actions have consequences, and words can wound deeper than knives. I leaned back, letting the weight of the moment settle. The family's eyes were fixed on John, the lesson sinking in like a stone in water, rippling outward with undeniable force. My children looked at me with new respect, not just for what I had done tonight, but for who I had been all along, a woman who endured, who loved, and who finally refused to be invisible any longer. And as John sat there, a man stripped of arrogance and forced to reflect, I realized something profound. Respect isn't earned through intimidation or mocking someone weaker. It's earned through integrity, patience, and the courage to finally speak your truth. Tonight, I had reclaimed mine. The days after that night felt surreal. John barely spoke, and when he did, it was quiet, hesitant, almost like he was walking on the fragile ground of his own shame. But I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My satisfaction wasn't in making him feel small, it was in finally standing tall, in finally proving to myself, to my children, and to the world that I mattered. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you stop living under someone else's shadow, and I felt it now radiating through every part of my life. The kitchen that had once been a place of ridicule had become my arena of triumph. My children kept asking questions, wide-eyed and curious, about how I stayed so strong all these years. And I told them the truth. Strength, I said, isn't about fighting back with anger. It's about knowing your worth, about holding on to your dignity even when others try to take it away. Sometimes, it takes 40 years to make someone realize that, but the lesson is worth the wait. They nodded, absorbing every word, their respect and love for me shining brighter than ever. I realized in that moment that I had passed down something far more valuable than recipes or household wisdom. I had passed down courage. John eventually tried to reconcile, his pride battered, his tone apologetic, but I was no longer the timid woman who waited for his approval. I listened, I acknowledged his words, but I didn't rush to forgive. Forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior, it's about freeing yourself. And I was free. I had fought my battle without bitterness, without revenge, and in doing so, I had claimed my life back. The house felt lighter, the laughter richer, and for the first time in decades, I felt genuinely at home in my own skin. And that's the message I want to leave with anyone listening to this story. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let years of ridicule or dismissive behavior convince you that you're worth less than you are. Your voice, your effort, your existence matters. Stand up. Speak out. Serve your truth on your own silver platter, not to hurt, but to show that your life, your dignity, and your happiness are non-negotiable. That is how you win, even after 40 years of being overlooked. So to everyone out there who has been mocked, belittled, or dismissed, remember this: strength isn't loud. Strength is enduring, and then, when the time is right, it's claiming your victory with grace, courage, and undeniable truth. Don't wait for the world to recognize your worth. Show it yourself. Let your actions, your resilience, and your quiet power speak louder than any words ever could. And when you finally do, you'll realize something incredible. The person you've been trying to prove yourself to may never fully understand, but the person who matters most, you, finally sees it, and that's enough.